I have had to start and stop this video so many times because I'm still struggling with the residual effects of COVID. I'm testing negative, but my face hasn't gotten the memo yet, but I digress. Wow, how many seconds in and I'm digressing already. So this story is a continuation, which I'm so excited when these things happen because I'm excited when a story began in the 90s and then suddenly I have a follow-up like more than 20 years later. And so many people come here and accuse me of like Arrested Development too. Like, oh, why are you so obsessed with the 90s? It's like, dude, would you go to a food channel and say, why are you so obsessed with carbs? My channel is rooted in goth. First and foremost, it's rooted in goth. But for me, my journey began in the 90s. So a lot of the stories that I have are kind of my youth back then. And some of you are just starting your journey. And some of you are around my age. And you will have had sort of parallel experiences. So I want to be able to share them and get them out there as sort of ways to, for the newer generation to kind of use them as a guide or to know kind of what to expect and get them hyped about what's to come. And then for everyone else, you can just reminisce and get nostalgic over it. But one day is going to come a time where I don't remember things as vividly as I do right now. And I hope that day doesn't come. So this, like I said, is a kind of continuation because I had a run-in with two people from previous stories more than 20 years later. And when I mention Arrested Development, these are people who are very much exactly the same. And when I told the story, it was kind of like, well, stories, my interactions with them were not great. They were quite negative. And they're still very much the same way. I think we kind of ascribe like our own beliefs and our own behaviors and our own kind of journey onto other people or to other people because we think, well, I've grown and I've matured and I know that like during certain periods I was an asshole. I said things that were maybe not nice. We think that other people had that same sort of journey when in fact they might have just doubled down and gotten like 10 times worse. And oh my God. I wouldn't say that they've gotten 10 times worse. I would say that they are the same as they were. So I'm going to start it with where it began in the second part of the story. It began with a girl. I'm going to rename her. We're going to call her Agnes. So Agnes is something that you'd nowadays refer to as a frenemy of mine. And I wish I knew that term back then because it would have been so useful and it would have come in handy. But Agnes is somebody who is very much what you would consider a frenemy. She is somebody I went to high school with. She's somebody who was part of the kind of friends group that I associated with and hung out with. And she was somebody that I more or less had to tolerate because I didn't like her. And she was very over the top, very obnoxious, and very much look at me. And her behavior made me really uncomfortable because it a lot of times put us in awkward and sometimes dangerous situations because she needed that attention on her so bad at times that she would do things a teenager shouldn't be doing, and nobody should be doing, let alone a 16-year-old at that. So I tried to limit my exposure to her and my interactions with her as little as possible. You have a lot of people, you hear them say, well, I was never about the drama, or I'm not about the drama. I liked hearing about it. I was just as, like every other teenager. I liked hearing the gossip. I liked hearing about the stuff. I didn't like being involved in it because it made me uncomfortable. I was not a very confrontational person in the sense to where I liked altercation. I didn't have any problem if I had an issue with somebody with standing up and saying something if things got too far, because that's kind of a sign of the times back then. It was very much indicative of the 90s because we didn't have a lot of this like keyboard warrior stuff. If you had something to say to somebody, you wanted to say it, you didn't go and like say it to them anonymously on some thread somewhere. You said it to their face. You called them on the phone, or you waited till you saw them and you said it to their face, or you kept your mouth closed. Because what ended up happening is if you talked, it would always find their way back to them. They would hear about it and they'd find their way back to you. So either way, you're going to have a confrontation with this person. So I made sure to limit what I had to say to what I really felt was important, because I really didn't feel like anything was really worth the drama or the hassle. So she and I definitely, back in the day, we definitely had words, because there were times where she just went overboard and I couldn't help it. I had to, enough is enough. You have to say something. So there were a few occasions where that did happen, but I want to kind of give you an idea. And some of these stories you may have remembered from my previous videos. They're very brief, but it's going to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So Agnes, One occasion, it was myself, Agnes, and a third friend. We were waiting at the bus stop to go home. We were in a little cute town called Sayville. We were just kind of spending the day in there, going to the coffee shop and doing whatever. And we were waiting for the bus to come and pick us up and take us, to the bus stop close to our house. And as we're waiting at the bus stop, I guess me and my friend were more kind of focused on each other while we were having a conversation and not paying much attention to Agnes. And the thing about that is when the focus was not on her, you had to make sure to include her as much as possible, because if she felt in any way that she was not the center of attention, she was going to do something nuts. So she had set her sights on this little old Spanish man that was sat at the bus stop as well. And this man could not speak any English, so he couldn't tell her, like, hey, stop it. But she was all over him, trying to sit on his lap, and he's like moving further and further down. Finally, he stands up and she's touching him and she's all over him. And I don't know if it was his bus that came first or if he was just getting on any bus to get away from her. But bus comes, he goes to get on the bus, and before he gets one foot on that bus, she grabs him by the face and just plants a kiss right on his lips. And this poor guy was like, you could tell he was traumatized. And we felt really bad. I mean, the whole time we're like, Agnes, stop, leave him alone. And it's, that kind of thing just sort of egged her on. We'll do two instances. Another instance is the same friend that was at the bus stop with us that day. He lived the next street over from me. So I would walk to and from his house all the time. It was super close. So we were all hanging out at his house, and his mother kind of let him have his own basement apartment. It was a finished basement. So he made his own little basement apartment in there. It was really cute. And we were hanging out there, and Agnes had these two guys that she met on something called IRC. So back in the day, there was something called Internet Relay Chat, which are kind of like chat rooms, I guess. Like some people had MSN, some people had AOL, and then you had the people that had IRC. She had IRC, and she met these two guys from New Jersey, had them come and visit. So it starts out innocently enough. I'm a little bit uncomfortable because I don't know who these guys are or anything like that, but they're our age and, slowly getting to know them, and they seem pretty cool. And, 5 teenagers chilling in a basement apartment. What can go wrong? A lot. So Agnes realizes the attention is not fully focused on her and she must get it back, and decides to suggest a game of truth or dare, to which I immediately said, nope, I'm out. I'll see you guys later. And I've already seen this person do enough. I am not about to see how far she can go. So they all offer to walk me home. Fine, walk me home. I don't mind. I'm on the next street. It's not long. So they start the game of truth or dare on the way home to my house. We turn the corner and we get to my block. We only just turned the corner onto my block. My house was like 3-4 houses in. And immediately she chooses dare, and she dares one of the guys from New Jersey, I forget his name, kiss her. And she says, okay, but he needs to say something romantic to me first. And I don't know why I remember exactly what he said to her. But he said, I love the way your glasses reflect the moonlight. And she got mad, but kissed him anyway. And this was like the one dare that I witnessed. So that was just scratching the surface of how bad the game would get by the play-by-play I got the next day from my friend whose house we were at. He was gay, by the way. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because he was, not exactly interested in getting with myself or Agnes or anything like that by way of this game. He just finds these kind of things funny. I don't know what station I thought that train was going to stop at, but it turns out my intuition kind of served me well that night, because it went like 13 stops past what I thought it would. So Agnes and my friend had engaged in something they never had as a friend duo together. How do I describe this? They did something to the guy from New Jersey. Let's just say they played the same flute together at the same time. So there have been a few occasions where she had put us in situations where I felt like I was in danger, because just like she did with the old man at the bus stop, she would kind of be loud and obnoxious in front of lots of other strangers that would draw unnecessary attention onto us. And when you're dressed goth, it's the 90s, and people are already kind of aggro toward anybody who's alternative, you don't want to make it that much worse. But she had a way of like wanting to antagonize strangers, and I wasn't about that. I didn't like that. So as you get older, friend groups, they start to dissipate, they start to one by one kind of drift off in their own directions and go and lead their own lives. And that happened very much here. And I can't say that I ever wondered what happened to her. So fast forward 20-something years later to today, and I'm suddenly invited to a new Facebook group that is, it's like Sachem Graduates 1998, but it's all the people that I associated with and all the people that I knew, like kind of those groups. It was great. It was great to see everybody and catch up, and I accepted. I was part of the group, and we're all chatting with one another, and even Agnes was part of the group. And I don't think anything of Agnes being part of the group because it's been more than 20 years. And the things that happened went down when we were teenagers. We're very young. So of course we're going to regret some things that we did or some of our behavior. And you grow up in that amount of time. Who doesn't grow up in that amount of time? Surely she inwardly cringes like we all do by some of the things that we did. Nope. I think we had probably about a month of like solid bliss of this group to where everybody was getting along and it was great until Agnes felt like the attention and the focus was not on her. Without prompting, without rhyme or reason, she starts posting nudes to this public group. These are people that we went to high school with. Some of them we all knew personally. Some people were faces that we'd seen in the hallway or faces we've seen at parties or were part of the group by extension, but we were just getting to know because, they were part of our memories, but kind of indirectly because they were kind of witnesses and they were there with us, but they weren't like directly friends with us, if that makes any sense. But she starts posting nudes to the group, and I don't mean like one a day. I mean like you probably got about a dozen nudes every single day. And, people are obviously like, they don't want to make her feel bad. They're like, hey, go you, looking great. You haven't aged a day. And, that's good. Like the first 15 nudie shots. I mean, even one would be, okay, that's kind of strange. It's kind of out of place and inappropriate, like to be posting without any prompting to a public high school reunion group. But, okay. But after being bombarded every single day, multiple times a day, was getting kind of uncomfortable. I'm like scrolling through my feed and I want to kind of interact with the group, but I literally cannot do that without seeing her naked in the shower. So I'm, in touch privately with a lot of people that are in the group. Either I became reacquainted with them or that I've just still been in contact with them for all those years. And there are people who, we're all kind of saying, I'm guilty of it too. Like, what the hell is she doing? Like, I can understand maybe one or two pictures, but this is like really, this is inappropriate. Like, do we say something? Nobody wanted to say anything because they didn't want to start any friction, which I can understand. She's posting these pictures and clearly putting herself out there, so she wants the attention. She's naked, clearly quite vulnerable. So what do you say? And I knew it was going to end up being me. I knew it. I knew it was going to be me. As many of you know, I'm kind of on my fertility journey, and she has a very young child. Child was very small, and as she's talking to me via DM, she's laughing and joking, like showing me pictures, sending me pictures of her hand full of Tums that are like sopping wet and dripping. If any of you don't know what Tums are, Tums is, it's an antacid. It's a stomach medication that you suck on it or chew on it, and it's supposed to settle your stomach. It's an antacid. And her kid was getting a hold of like this Costco-sized version that she had out within its reach, and she kept finding him with the Tums in his mouth, and she would go and scoop them out. And I can't tell you how many times she sent me this picture. Oh, look, more Tums. Put them up somewhere where he cannot reach them. Stop putting them in the child's reach. She's telling me that she can't figure out how he keeps getting a hold of these Tums and getting him, which is dangerous for a child to get hold of any kind of medication, especially one that's a toddler. And she keeps saying, oh, I don't know how he keeps getting hold of them. I don't see him do it. But firstly, you take the medication and you put it up out of the child's reach. He's a toddler. You put it on the fridge, done and dusted. He's not going to get them anymore. But moreover, maybe if you spent less time taking naked pictures of yourself to post in the group every single day, perhaps you would catch them in the act of taking the medication in the first place. But that, I think, is what kind of fueled me when I finally, I've seen one too many naked pictures of her, and I forget how it specifically went down. And I think it had to have been on one of her posts, one of her naked posts. And this is a public group, and I'm often, my computer is in view of other people. Can we kind of agree that maybe posting nudes here is not appropriate? Because I made sure that I wasn't insulting in any way. And I don't want to body shame anybody. I didn't want anybody to feel like they were being attacked by way of their physical appearance. Just to say, hey, maybe this isn't appropriate here to be posting. So I got a lot of responses from people really just kind of concurring with what I was saying. Like, I'm glad somebody said something. I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to be insulting or anything like that. But as much as we love catching up with you. You still look amazing. But, can we kind of agree that this really isn't the appropriate space for you to be posting your nudes? She immediately jumped on the defensive, and it was immediately kind of coming at me. And she wasn't attacking me or anything. It was more the on the defensive, saying, I'm so humiliated. I feel so disgusting and ugly, and I'm never going to post in here again. Why would you try to humiliate me like this? I'm like, I'm not trying to humiliate you. I just don't want to see you naked 20 times a day when I'm trying to catch up with people from high school. I'm not saying I don't want you here. I'm not saying get out of here, lady. I'm saying, post, be part of things. I just don't want to see you naked anymore. This is where player 2 enters the game. Player 2, we're going to call Doris. I've mentioned Doris before on this channel, just once in one of my videos when I discussed my first day of school and what it was kind of like starting school, being alternative, listening to alternative music, but not fully going through that transition because I'm still kind of dressing normally. And my first day, like, kind of starting off really badly before I even got on the bus. So Doris, I'm just going to give you a quick refresher from the video where she was mentioned. First day of school comes around, and the bus stop is about 1 block behind my house. So I walk to the bus stop, and as I'm walking up, I feel a knot in my stomach because there are 2 kids waiting there already. There's a guy and a girl, and it's 1994. So we don't have these things. And what I mean by this, there's none of this. Therefore, there's no buffer. There's nothing standing between me and them to kind of create that little barrier where I would feel less pressure from the situation. So the only thing I could do is either walk up and say nothing or walk up and say hi. So I walked up and I said hello. The boy, he immediately said hello back. He was very nice. The girl rolled her eyes and turned her back, physically, in a physical display of I do not like you, turns her back and faces the other way. Not off to a very good start. And I'm thinking, I don't know this girl. I've never met her before in my life. So this was before I even got to school, before I even got on the bus. We're not off to a good start. So like I said, I didn't know Doris from a hole in the wall. She didn't know me. And it's not like we had any prior beef or anything like that because I was not from the area. I wasn't just starting high school for the first time. I was new to the town. I was born and raised on like the cusp of Queens. I was like late Long Island, early Queens, and I had friends that I would go walk to their house 2 blocks over, and I was literally in Queens. So Eastern Long Island, Lake Ronkonkoma, this is like new turf for me. And I lived in Florida in between. So I went from like Queens, Florida for 5 years, and then back to New York, and I moved all the way out to Lake Ronkonkoma. I did not know these people. I did not know her. So immediately, I know, because I'm weird. I was always a very weird kid, and I was fully aware of that. And I had to learn how to try to act normal. I was very hyper aware of myself because I needed to make sure, like when I met people, okay, when you're meeting people for the first time, smile, not this smile, but the normal smile, the one that we practiced. And try to say as little as possible. Just listen. Because giving me the opportunity to speak was like giving me the opportunity to say something completely off the wall. And I didn't want that to happen. So naturally, when I got that reaction from her, I immediately thought, well, I screwed that up. I must have done something weird. And I put the blame on myself, which I'd always done when people didn't take to me because I assumed that it was something that I'd done. Later, I found out that sometimes you're not everyone's cup of tea, and then sometimes other people are just assholes. And it was over 20 years later that I realized she was and is a giant asshole. So here's what happened. Doris, as we're going to call her, she starts responding, saying something along the lines of, same old Angela, nothing ever changes. I remember every time Doris and I interfaced quite vividly, and I can categorically say that she and I never, ever spoken one word to each other. Ever. And even if I had tried to speak to her, there's no way she'd even respond. Because the second I was anywhere near, she would deliberately turn her back and not even look at me and scoff every time I opened my mouth to anybody else that was around. And this was only at the bus stop. The only time we saw each other was at the bus stop, because she lived like one block behind me, and then we'd see each other at the bus stop. And then that's it. We had a really big school, and I don't recall ever seeing her in school, and we didn't have the same friend group either. So why she was saying same old Angela never changes, kind of like she has insight to who I was as a person, I found very odd. So I DM'd her. I had to know. I'm going to read this to you. And before I do, I know you're probably going to be confused as to why I'm coming at her so gently and being so apologetic when I didn't really do anything wrong in the first place. But there's two reasons for that. So one, I don't know, maybe I did actually offend her or hurt her feelings or something in some way. Or I came at her, or when I approached the bus stop that day, maybe I made her feel some type of way. And it led to some crazy misunderstanding. And, this is an opportunity for closure for the both of us. I don't know. Two, moral high ground. Always take the moral high ground. This person can either meet you on your level and things can end amicably and you both have answers. Two, they're actually an asshole. They take the low road, and in no way do you come out looking like an asshole because there was nothing that you said to warrant that level of response. So in the event that they try to talk shit, please refer to Exhibit A. I'm not even sure that I'm going to send this message, but I'm typing it anyway just in case I decide to. As much as I'd really prefer them not to, friends feel the need to screenshot Agnes's comments on a post about me and then text them to me. I've seen everything said, including your input, Doris. Now, you and I have never actually spoken to one another. A little over a year, I lived a block away from you. I moved to that house from Florida, so not only was I starting my first year of high school, I was starting it in a place where I knew no one, and I was terrified. Incidentally, you and I were on the same bus, oftentimes the same bus stop. They say that people remember the most random things sometimes, and something that actually is quite vivid in my memory is my first encounter with you. It was the first week of school, and as you waited for the bus outside your house, you had a friend with you who you seemed quite close with, and I think his name was either blank or blank. I can't remember. He'd always seemed quite pleasant enough, though. I said hello to the both of you, and I was pretty taken aback by your response since I'd never actually met either of you before this day. Refusing to look at me, you condescendingly rolled your eyes and turned away. Your friend, however, returned the hello. That whole bus ride, I was confused as hell. I was trying to figure out what the hell I did to elicit that sort of reaction from you. I forgot about it once I got to school, but then the next morning it was no different. From that day on, you continue to have the same reaction to my presence. Over the next coming days, it managed to progress from rolling your eyes to the addition of a scoff and a display of flat-out, over-the-top disgust. Looking back on it, it seems less of a spontaneous reaction and more of you wanting me to know how you felt about me, but I never understood why. Some days it would just seep into the background, but other days I would dissect my every micro-gesture just to try to figure out what the fuck I did or was doing to make you hate me so much. I was a pretty insecure kid. Apart from the bus stop, I don't recall ever seeing you in school, let alone outside in a social situation, so I was pretty baffled about the whole thing. More than a few times I talked myself out of confronting you to ask what I'd done to you, but then I thought better of it. Nothing to do with you, but my mother started driving me to school more, and I saw less of you, and eventually, about 2 months into 10th grade, my family moved to Holbrook, and after that, I didn't see you at all. About the comment you made about me. You speak very matter-of-fact, as if you have some keen insight to who I was back then and who I am today. Doris, what you knew of me was from the brief and random times we interfaced at the bus stop from the age of 14 to 15. That's it. How can you seriously claim to know anything about me at all? As far as my qualms with Agnes, you have no idea of our history together, nor what transpired to elicit my reaction. Rather than go into some detailed explanation to defend myself, that's between she and I'm not one to spill one's personal business regardless of how I feel about them. Besides, that's not what this is about. From my perspective, you judged me back then and you judged me fucking hard. Before I got a chance to even open my mouth, you already decided that you hated me. Part of your comment was to say that I've not changed. However, once again, 21 years later, here you are judging me again and saying some pretty nasty things in the process, based on one side of the story that you know nothing about. Yet I'm the one who hasn't changed? Can you not see the hypocrisy in that? The fact of the matter is, Doris, you know no more about me now than you did back in 1994. I don't expect a response from you. If you choose to respond, cool. If not, that's okay too. But if you do, I really would like to know what it was that I did to you to make you hate me that much, because I cannot for the life of me figure it out. And get this was her response. Hope you have a great life. Mine is amazing. Hope you find the same happiness that I did. Moving away from Long Island was the best and worst thing I did. Blank is doing great, by the way, as well. Cheers. Blank is the person that was standing with her at the bus stop. When we're young, we do things that we regret. We say dumb things. We make mistakes, but we learn from them. And we move on and become better people as an adult because you learn how to interact with people. You learn empathy. And I was not a bad kid, but I was no angel myself. Like the time where I got into a fight with my boyfriend over the phone, he pissed me off, and I hit record on my parents' answering machine, and I baited him into talking shit about our friend's industrial band. And once I got him talking shit, I immediately called my friends after, told them that he was talking shit about their band, played them the recording, and they came to my house, picked up the tape, used it in their latest song, and then debuted that song at our friend's Sweet 16, where my boyfriend was in attendance and would hear his own voice echoing back at him over industrial beats. And when they told me about 10 minutes before they performed this song that it was about to happen, I went and hid in her house, laid in the bathtub. I laid on the bathtub floor in the parents' bathroom in the dark, and absolutely terrified to go outside and like face the music, literally face the music. He was pissed, but he put on a good front, and still to this day he thinks it's funny. So I would say that was kind of like fairly instant karma on me. I felt like I was getting instant karma on him because he was saying some pretty mean things to me. So I was like, all right, you want to be mean? I'm going to get you back. But that's like a perfect example of like, the 90s, how back then your actions and your behavior and your words will always find their way back to you, and you will have to atone for them. And that's, a great example of that kind of coming full circle for me. And I learned. But I guess like the lesson in all this is that sometimes we could be the villain in someone else's story and not even know it. In a lot of ways, when I sent that message to Doris, I would find out that maybe I came up with a certain attitude, or I presented myself in a way that made her feel insulted or something. I don't know. I guess I was kind of hoping for that. Sometimes people can give you more insight into a situation by saying nothing. And that's exactly the way that it went down with Doris. Her response to my DM, it told me more about her, me, and the situation than I think that she realizes, because I gave a complete play-by-play of exactly the way I remember things going down. I gave her a play-by-play of her behavior, of my perception of her behavior, the way that it made me feel, and furthermore, pointing out that she and I had never spoken to one another ever, and questioning how she felt that she had any insight to me as a person then versus now. And her response, by way of just dismissing it entirely, shows me that, one, she completely confirmed my perception of it. The way that I remember it happening is exactly the way that it did happen, because she didn't deny a single thing, so she confirmed it. And she also validated my feelings. So basically what she's saying is, yes, you remembered everything correctly. Yes, I went out of my way to treat you like a piece of shit. No, I don't regret it, and I feel fucking great. So the big takeaway from all this is that it's not as deep as I thought it was, because when time goes by and you have a lot of time to think about things and stew on them, you can like assign all of these like different possibilities, when in actuality, she's a passive aggressive bully. And sometimes bullies don't necessarily have to use fists. They can just use their words and make you feel bad. And that's it, it's simple as that. And she was then, and she still is now. I could never imagine somebody telling me that I made them feel some type of way when I was a kid, because we know better. But here she is, a full-grown adult, should know better now, still double down. And it's not like I even had the somewhat relationship with her that I had with Agnes, because at least with Agnes, we had mutual friends and we had hung out in group settings on numerous occasions together and had talked. It wasn't like that with, what am I calling her, Doris, where she and I had never spoken. She kind of years later saw an opportunity where I was brought up in a negative light and couldn't wait to kind of jump in on that, still after not knowing me. And sometimes people are like that. And I think sometimes we just expect more from people than they're capable of. There's a saying that goes, it's better to regret the things you said rather than the things that you didn't say. And in this situation, to me, it's something that holds very true, because I read so much into my own behavior and I had so much self-doubt because of my awkwardness that I didn't realize that at the time I was actually being bullied. But bullies don't always have to work with their fist. If somebody's deliberately going out of their way to make you feel like shit, it's bullying. But I didn't realize it at the time, and I didn't realize it until after. And having that validated by way of having them essentially double down on it, that it gave me that sense of regret for not standing up for myself then, like I should have. But I doubted myself so much that I was like, it's got to be me. And in actuality, it's just an asshole. So I think my advice to you in this situation is that if you feel like you're being wronged in some way, stand up for yourself. You don't have to necessarily stand up for yourself in a way that's aggressive or accusatory, but speak your truth, speak your mind. It's always good to nip these things in the bud before they have the potential to become something more. So that is my continuation of my story. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time,